everybody, and welcome back to another Quiet Time. Today's passage is Proverbs, chapter 11, verse 27. From the New Living Translation, we read, "If you search for good, you will find favor, but if you search for evil, it will find you." And from the New King James Version, we read, "He who earnestly seeks good finds favor, but trouble will come to him who seeks evil." And now, on to my thoughts. In this verse, we see the wise King Solomon tell us how if we search for good, we will find the favor of God. However, if we search for evil, it will also find us. With that said, let's go ahead and look at the first point that Solomon mentioned, which is searching for good. Now, biblically speaking, searching for good can be basically summed up by doing God's will. This includes, but is not limited to, reading the Bible, going to church, volunteering in your community, and of course, discipling others. And honestly speaking, this is something that pretty much all of us who claim to be true Christians do on a pretty much regular basis. But are you doing them fully? By this I mean, are you doing those things that God has called you to do to your fullest extent? 110%? Giving your all to the glory in the name of the Father Almighty? Or are you just simply going through the motions, doing the bare minimum it takes to get on by? You see, if we're truly searching for something, that means that we're actively looking for it. For example, if you had an envelope in it that had $300 in it and you lost it, would you just say, oh well, come and go? Or would you be frantically searching through your house, through your car, anywhere you think that it might be, because that money means so much to you? Probably the latter. And so should it be when it comes to doing the things that God has called us to do. We should have a passion to do those things that goes far beyond doing the bare minimum to get by. So that if something happens that would make us want to give up, we would instead just keep pushing on through until we accomplish what the Lord has called us to do. For only in doing so will we be truly searching for good, or more specifically, God's will for our lives. With that said, let's now move on to the second point that King Solomon made, which is how if we search for evil, it will find us. Now, I'm pretty sure that mostly everybody, Christian or not, is not actively searching out evil. The idea of someone being extremely happy about committing as much evil as they can is nothing more than an 80s villain trope. Even those people who do commit heinous crimes usually don't see themselves as being evil, but rather just doing what is necessary to fulfill their desires. However, the way I believe that most people search for evil is simply when they stop searching for good. You see, as long as you're consistently doing God's will on a daily basis, then you'll always be searching for good. However, the problem lies when other things start getting in the way of doing God's will. These can include, but are not limited to, TV, movies, streaming, video games, or excessive smartphone use. Now, I should point out that doing these things, even on a daily basis, is not inherently evil. For even though God calls us to do His will, He also knows that we are only human, and eventually we will need to rest, or else have a complete mental burnout, or simply just die from exhaustion. However, we need to be able to discern God's calling on us to rest, and God's calling on us to get back to work. Because quite frankly, it's much easier for us to spend our time doing the things that relaxes us rather than doing God's will. And if we're not careful, we can get to the point where we're no longer doing God's will at all, but instead, we're spending every waking moment living solely for ourselves. And living solely for ourselves when we know God is calling us to do His will is a form of pride, which in itself is a sin. In other words, if you're not seeking good via doing God's will on your own life, then you're seeking evil by lusting after the dark desires of your own pride. And that has been today's Quiet Time. I hope that you found it informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. See ya then.